Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Thank you very much for joining me this morning for a special edition of the program. Now, this morning we are speaking to UNESCO's Media and Information Literacy Week 2023. This year's theme is Media and Information Literacy in Digital Spaces, a Collective Global Agenda. Now, according to the United Nations Economic, Social and Cultural Organization, known as UNESCO, Global Media and Information Literacy Week, commemorated annually, is a major occasion for mobilizing worldwide stakeholders to raise awareness in order to increase national take-up and celebrate the progress achieved towards media and information literacy for all. It has been celebrated since 2011, and this year has been championed during the week of the 24th to the 31st of October, today of course being the last day in that timeline. In 2023, it is estimated that 60% of the world's population, or approximately 4.75 billion people, have expressed themselves, informed themselves and asked questions via digital spaces. But exactly what progress has been made in regards to information and digital literacy, in which a globalized citizen is a digital citizen, and the digitization has dissolved boundaries, of course, between individuals? Are there benefits to a digital divide as governments seek to formulate and enact policy and regulatory framework to prevent the overflow of content that has the potential to destabilize democracy and peace? What about protecting fundamental rights while still ensuring the existence of security? Well, hopefully we'll get to answer these questions and more this morning as I welcome my guest to the program. First, we have joining us Ms. Debbie Goodman. She's a manager of corporate communications at the National Library and Information System Authority, or NALIS, here in Trinidad and Tobago. Ms. Goodman is a seasoned integrated marketing communications professional. And prior to joining NALIS, Ms. Goodman worked in the advertising industry in Trinidad and Tobago in the areas of strategic marketing, public relations, television and radio production, media relations, market research, advertising sales, event management, graphic designs, and client service. And by the way, that there in itself is just more or less the summarized version of her wonderful career thus far. In April 2000, she joined NALIS as head of public relations and marketing department, a position to which she still holds. Good morning, Ms. Goodman. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for joining me this morning. And then I welcome Ms. Sharina Mills. She's a business manager at Federation Media Group Limited, or SKN WINNFM 98.9 since 2022. She initiated a children's radio show called Conversations with Our Kids, where the children host their own radio show and ask the guests informed and educated conversations on topics that affect them. Her inspiration, her 10-year-old daughter, who said it's kids, innocent kids, that do not have a voice on the radio or anywhere else in the media, though they have a lot to say and learn in every aspect of life. Ms. Mills, good morning, and thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's certainly a pleasure. Well, let's start the conversation by trying to define some terms that those watching this morning may not necessarily be familiar with. When we're speaking of media and information literacy, precisely what is it that we are referring to? Ms. Goodman, if you'd like to start the conversation with defining in your terms exactly what media and information literacy is.
Okay, good morning again. So basically, it's the ability to access, analyze, and evaluate information. As you're aware, then in the era of yellow journalism, and that's where journalism and politics often intertwine, and where lines are blurred between editorial content and promotion, it is important for persons to be able to analyze critically information, and that's where our libraries come in, which we help people to not only gather information, but to analyze information. Of course, we live in a world of fake news, and this problem is compounded by factors which are difficult to determine the source of accuracy. And so we have self-publishing, we have sponsored posts, we have personal blogs, we have lack of bylines, promotional stories, native advertising, and the list goes on and on. And today, of course, the emergence of media and the allowance for the quick dissemination of information causes information, of course, to be not disseminated correctly, and or misinformation, and there's disinformation. And therefore, it's important for us to be able to critically analyze and evaluate the information that's being fed to us. I mean, that's a mouthful, but essentially, we have to be able to analyze information disseminated to us.
Ms. Mills, Ms. Goodman just used a term there, accuracy, analyzing and disseminating with accuracy. Is that the genesis of what UNESCO's Media and Information Literacy Week for the last few years has been trying to achieve?
Yes. Particularly, I find, because we do produce news at Media SCAN, we have an issue where the real news gets lost in the media, especially in digital spaces, because you're competing with journalists who are not trained in accuracy and reporting news properly. So we're always faced with the issue of putting news out there that's competing with news that might not be from reliable sources are done properly. So our aim at WIN Media is to make sure that the listeners and readers and viewers, especially in St. Kitts, have accurate news and are able to analyze it properly, have all the facts, it's reported properly for them to make their own decision and analyze the facts properly, and not really having to compete with those who have blogs and YouTube channels and producing the same news, because we're facing that issue now that everybody's using the same internet, the same space to send information, and we have to make sure that ours is seen, because we are trying to report the correct or accurate information, while others might be more for sensationalism or for views or likes.
Ms. Mills.
And if I can add to that,
of course, yes.
If you allow me to, and you mentioned the internet, and the internet has created a bigger problem in that it certainly has it's really complicated to tackle, if we are honest. But there's a long-standing tension between the public interest and conscientious reporting, as you just indicated. And of course, there's the private interest, where it's just about making dollars and cents. So it's important. I think we all have our roles to play. The media and other institutions like the library, we have our role to play in ensuring that people understand how to evaluate the information. And that is why NALIS took time to produce a series called Creating a Generation of Thinkers. And that series is ongoing. It's available on our YouTube and Facebook pages. But I'll just tell you that when we created that series, it was about social corporate responsibility and ensuring that we tell the public the difference between information and disinformation, the difference between fake news and what is truth, given yellow journalism as it is. Also, we dealt with cyberbullying, and we dealt with how to share what to share on the internet, because as we know, people share a lot of information and people take those things as truth.
So following that, Ms. Goodman, of what you've just actually relayed to us, are you of the opinion that users of digital spaces actually understand the responsibility of being a digital citizen?
No, unfortunately, not many persons understand. And I just mentioned about sharing a lot of information, and people do not know that can also harm their reputation. So we have a lot of young adults in particular who would share, they went to the beach, or they went here, they went there, or in different scenarios, different situations, and they don't know what they share may affect them maybe in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s, and they forget that they would have shared that information. So people really are not as knowledgeable as they ought to be, and I think people need to take time to learn how to share, how to post, how to analyze the information that's presented to them.
Ms. Mills, you've actually spoken from the aspect of a newsroom, which I think is a rather good example, because the responsibility is not only what the viewing audience, listening audience, or audience, whether it be via social media, what they are seeing, what they are learning, and what they are sharing, but responsibility also falls on the journalists for the information that they are reporting and disseminating. That being the case, the responsibility as journalists in a digital space, as a digital citizen. Please share your thoughts and opinions on that.
So when I started working at WinFM in St. Kitts, I realized that information is basically free, and people, one thing about the Caribbean is we like drama and we like entertainment. We have a flair for entertainment and drama. So that news gets pushed more than the news with the facts. And my news team knows this. They write awesome stories. They write accurate stories. They're always doing their research. St. Kitts is really small, and we have to make sure that what we put there is accurate because it gets back to everyone with the population size that we have. So we decided that we're going to get the facts before we print any news stories or post any news stories, and make sure that our sources are legitimate. And we're going to share the news in a responsible manner, because there are some times that I look at news stories, especially the horrible ones, and it's more so for people to click on it, like it, share it, and disseminate the picture that comes with it, versus the actual story that you're trying to push and say, well, perhaps we need to look at stats for homicide, or perhaps we need to look at what crime is doing to the economy. Instead, it's for, who's this that died in that picture, right? So we're fighting that fight right now, and we're getting training. One thing I realized too is that if you start with them young, we might not have an issue with sharing on digital spaces. So when my daughter came and said kids don't have a voice, they don't get to be on the radio. In fact, I don't think she ever listened to radio except we're in the car. So I was like, the Caribbean is all about radio. I remember listening to my neighbor's radio on a Sunday afternoon, or my grandmother would constantly listen to news on every morning before she goes to the mountain, right? So I said, it's a shame that the kids don't have the information via this media source, and it's more so what they see on the internet, because she tells me everything she sees on TikTok or YouTube. So I said, you know what? We need to teach them that they can express themselves, they can connect with each other, that they can share information and get information and do research, and make sure that what they're saying is research, make sure that they're sharing information that is accurate, and that they're able to analyze the information that they get. Especially most of the kids are ages 7 to 11. So we trained them. We had a training session where they learned about media and media accuracy, and how to basically have a conversation with research, because they have a script, they're scripted. They know that when it's Saturday mornings, they have to make sure they have their questions, and they have to go and do their research on the topic, and the topics are usually things that they want to talk about. So we started from young, and the newsroom is an awesome help also, because we use stories, or we use things that may have happened in St. Kitts to discuss with the kids also.
Now, starting from young is very much applauded, and it's very good to hear of such programs and initiatives. Ms. Goodman also highlighted analysis activities that they are incorporating in order to actually help in terms of the education for information and media literacy. But following up a question, Ms. Mills, on all that you would have mentioned, particularly the responsibilities of a newsroom and a radio station, in this current environment that we live in, it permits for anyone to create and distribute content. And that, in essence, is an overflow of information at times. Now, you have responsibility as journalists, but even in your reporting, as you mentioned, in verifying that it is accurate, the skills, the attitudes, the knowledge that actually come with such, what are the possible implications, positive or negative, on democracy and peace, for example?
Okay, I think my newsroom would love these questions, right? As I'm going to be representing them with my answer, democracy and peace. So in St. Kitts, it's pretty much news travels faster by word of mouth. But the internet just speeds that up because for example, we'll see anything probably political on WhatsApp before we actually even produce the story. So in our case, we kind of have to chase what you already know, that you've gotten on WhatsApp forwarded to you a million times on your phone, or you've seen on Facebook or Instagram, when we now have to go and develop the story and get the accurate facts. So for us, during, I would say, political season, because we have elections every 5 years. Our last election was in August 2020. Our job as journalists was made really hard when you had to chase news that was already out there and then get in touch with the politicians after to verify. So people already had their news, they already had their story, they already had made up their own mind, and then we're coming in and saying, well, perhaps that's not really what happened. Here's what. And getting in touch with politicians, one thing about democracy is they want to be able to answer questions that they already have the answer to. So they want to have all the questions before and tell you which ones they want to answer. And I find that might be a little adverse to really promoting democracy. But we're faced with a challenge. We're working with it. We are trying to basically show them that putting the information out there first with the media, with responsible journalists, is the way to go, because after you have a story out there, it's basically cleanup after. So we are working with the politicians here, we're working with the government here, we're working with all those in the political system to make sure that information is disseminated properly, so people have the right facts and they can analyze it based on the right facts. But like I said, we're usually chasing something that was out there already. I don't know if the politicians put it out there themselves, but we always, it's more for cleanup job for us to make sure that people have the right information at this point, because the internet wins most of the time.
Ah, yes, Ms. Goodman.
But I'll tell you something. COVID-19, the lockdown taught us a lot.
Yes.
And it also magnified a lot of things. What we take for granted is that persons know how to use social media, they know how to use the internet, they know how to gather all the information that they need to gather. And what we have found at NALIS is that students in particular did not know. We assume they know because they had this phone all the time in their hand.
Precisely.
But they didn't know. So we created a navigating online series in collaboration with the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, where we created a lot of videos, approximately 13 videos for the students and about 10 for parents, because parents needed to know too how to access information, what their students or their children were doing online. And some basic things like Microsoft Word, how to check sources of information. Those were some of the things we tackled in that series because we felt it was important. And unfortunately, some persons used that lockdown period where people would have been online more often to capitalize and to manipulate and to really throw out fake news and fake stories to catch people's attention and to create their own narratives.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, Ms. Goodman, the difficulties associated with those 2.5, 3 years in particular, because the COVID-19 pandemic, what we would have seen is a lot of disinformation and misinformation to epic extents. It was rather incredible. And the thing is, the lessons that we have learned actually following the COVID-19 pandemic, especially as in regards to information and disinformation, misinformation, that is, of course, trust has become a huge factor in individuals now expressing their opinions, expressing their thoughts, and gaining knowledge. So what has it been like following such lessons in terms of trying to build that trust once more?
Well, firstly, I don't think that we have learned the lessons. We say that we say that we have, but I think we have gone back to even worse than where we started before the pandemic. That's my view. But it's important, of course, as you indicated, to build trust, and that is where the media will come in. That's why institutions like the library analysts will come in, professionals like myself and Ms. Mills here, because we understand that media and information literacy has the potential to serve as a builder of societal interest. And if we do not, in this post-COVID, post-truth, fake news, alternative facts environment, we have to provide persons with the tools that they need to be able to distinguish between truth, what is truthful, what is misleading content, etc.
Ms. Mills,
but as I said, I don't think we have really learned, not yet.
And that's where I heard Ms. Mills. Ms. Mills, it seems as though she agrees with you.
Well, I think the media has a hard task in the next few years of getting people to trust them again.
Yeah.
Not so much the local media here, more so regional and international, because we were so bombarded with sources of information, especially during the pandemic. And all we had was information because you couldn't go anywhere. So you had to pick up your phone or your tablet. Yeah. All you had was tons of information telling you what was happening, what didn't happen, what should happen, and you didn't know who to trust. So the media definitely has a job in the next 3-4 years, getting people to trust the information that they put out, but also being able to get people to analyze the information. But I think people also started analyzing information more during the pandemic because, again, there were so many stories and different sources telling you different things, especially about what's happening with the pandemic itself, that you kind of had to do your own research, you know, whether this is a conspiracy theory or whether this is fact, right? And we as a media are dealing with people still questioning if this is a conspiracy theory or if it's fact because of what happened. So we definitely have a hard task in the next couple, 5 years, maybe 10, getting people to say, hey, we're trustworthy, this information is accurate, you can analyze it, you can ask questions, but we did our research, we're making sure that we give you the information that you need and not the one that's being pushed for an agenda. Because that's what came off. Like, everybody had their own agenda to tell you more about this pandemic that's happening to them. So we have a tough job ahead of us.
It certainly is a difficult job.
Allow me, Keaton, to put in a plug here, if you don't mind, for librarians and libraries, because there's a quote that says, and we say it oftentimes here, that Google can give you 100,000 responses, but the librarian can give you the correct one. So I urge people to still utilize their libraries and legitimate sources that the library would provide via its databases that, of course, we pay for, that you use for free via its databases, because it's critical. And we've all made the point that people need to be able to access information for themselves, and it's important that you don't maybe depend on some sources, because some sources are really there only to misguide you, to mislead you, to put you down a rabbit hole, the conspiracy theorists and so it's important that you do your research for yourself, and be able to analyze the information for yourself. And that's a skill people really need to learn. And we take these things, we say these things too, and we take it for granted that everybody knows how to analyze the information that is received. But some of the points are that you have to ensure that you know the source, because not every source is a legitimate source. Also, some stories, the headlines are misleading. you're in the media, so you know that when you see a headline but you really read the story, it does not line up. You go, really? if you're smart enough, you question it. You know, you have to know your source. And then some things are made, there's some truth in it. It may be, say, 90% truth, but there's 10% untruth, and it still makes it untruth. So therefore, it's important for us to be able to analyze the information. We cannot stress that enough when we celebrate media and information literacy. So analyzing, evaluating the information, that's critical for our existence in a world where there's so much information coming to us. You know, there's also a saying that in the information-rich world, ignorance is not an option. There's that saying. But that saying does not take into account that, one, people don't have the devices. We assume that people have devices to gather the information. And it also does not take into account that people don't know how to analyze the information that they've required. So although there is that about in the information-rich world, we really need to provide persons with the tools to be able to analyze, evaluate, and of course access, firstly, the information that's out there.
I think this is a fantastic conversation thus far. We have the opportunity to speak from the view of a librarian and to hear it from a journalist working in the newsroom in a neighboring island here in the Caribbean. And we've also had the opportunity to learn and understand exactly the initiatives that such are incorporating to help educate when it comes to media and information literacy. And at this time, I'd also like to take the opportunity to congratulate UNESCO, who in the last 2 years have trained over 5,500 teachers in Latin America and the Caribbean in media and information literacy, in the hopes that they also pass on such knowledge to their students. Ladies, as we continue with this program this morning, and thank you for your contribution thus far, let's focus a bit more on the challenges before we get into the opportunities, because there are a number of opportunities. One of the issues that rose and continues to be something that it challenges many people is that of privacy when we speak about information, analyzing information, disseminating information. And again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, anyone now can create and share information. However, the issue of privacy stems from protection from certain rights, the right to access information, the right to the formulation of personality, all of which the United Nations themselves have recognized. But when we speak about media and information literacy, and Ms. Mills, I'm going to start with you first, given that you are a journalist in a newsroom, is it that privacy is something that is not often focused on? Is it more so on personal security that needs greater focus, or the security for all?
Okay, let me clarify that I'm not a journalist. I am the business manager for Win Media, which we do have a newsroom, and there are journalists that work in the newsroom. And we do, we meet weekly to discuss stories and what's happening, new developments. But I can say that in the Caribbean, particularly in St. Kitts, we are a little behind in privacy in the media. We tend to put stuff out there and then hope that no one sues us for putting it there after. not at Win FM or not at Win Media SCAN, because we do our due diligence, and we also make sure that we have your permission. When we record you, when we get a statement from you, when we call you, we do get your permission and ask you if you'd be on record. And the thing about it is that we value privacy, because there are a lot of times there's a developing story and the politician would say, I'm not ready to talk about that at this moment. And we have to respect that. Or we find something out that might not be the best news development for what they're promoting. And we go and we do our research and we ask if this is allowed, if we're able to put this information out there, because again, we value privacy, but we are still way far behind. We're just getting legislation here in St. Kitts basically protecting you on social media and on digital platforms when it comes to privacy in information and in the media, because there have been instances in the past where information has been put out there and the person who the information is about has to take legal action after. And I do still see some news sources, whether they're legitimate or not, that post information that I always question and wonder if this was allowed by the person or organization or groups that the information is about, because it seems like a breach of privacy for some of the facts that they do have. It's somebody they asked, and instead of wondering if this is something you're going to put out there because of the implications, they post it because it looks juicy and it makes a good story. And then 6 months later down the line, they have to go face a lawsuit. So we are very careful at WinFM when it comes to that, because we know that people value their privacy when it comes to their information, and the law still has some catching up to do. And we don't want to be in that situation where we're not reliable and we're not accurate, and we're not one of the news sources in St. Kitts and Nevis and in the Caribbean on a whole that people trust. Because once you breach that and you breach somebody's privacy, pretty much people won't trust you or your information again.
Ms. Goodman, and this is, I like how Ms. Mills also mentioned in regards to a policy or regulatory framework, because that is also the challenge for many Caribbean nations in regards to media and information literacy, though I am aware of instances in which islands have already taken the first steps. For example, Jamaica, the Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica, in partnership with UNESCO and the Mona School of Business, they actually have started their work in regards to policy and regulatory framework. But Ms. Goodman, on that particular issue as well, any framework has the opportunity to address another issue that can be seen as both a positive and a negative, and that is the digital divide. There are many who may actually share the opinion that the access to internet is a basic human right, and any opportunities on digital spaces should actually be for all. However, UNESCO has acknowledged that emerging economies and marginalized societies are the last to gain access to such. If we were to focus on both the positives and negatives of the digital divide, precisely how should a regulatory or policy framework address that issue, especially in regards to media and information literacy?
Interesting question. I don't know if I can speak to the legalities and the policy, but what I do want to say is that we have to look at the issue of fair play. We have to look at the issue of mutual respect, and in terms of privacy, that should be our basis. Fair play, mutual respect for all, and except for we're talking about, if we put in the mix the whole issue of wrongdoing, exposing wrongdoing, then that's a different thing in terms of what information you share and how you share it, etc. But respect, the underlying basis for our operation should be respect and fair play. Mm-hmm. I also want to touch on the whole thing of digital divide, because one of the things we see in my environment, the library and information environment, is that libraries level the plane and we bridge the digital divide. And of course, as I indicated earlier, not everyone has access, and that's why we ensure that our libraries have computers and free internet access and free Wi-Fi, so people can in fact get information, walk through the doors at any point in time, and you have those facilities free of charge to your disposal.
Mm-hmm. And then let's focus now on the opportunity in regards to that. It's a very good way to segue into opportunity, actually, because the initiatives by UNESCO are far-reaching. Over 100 countries and are a part of Media and Information Literacy Week, which is remarkable. So there is success over the last 10 years plus in regards to this particular agenda put forward by UNESCO. If I were to revert back to the theme just for a moment, where we speak about a global agenda in regards to this week's and what we are commemorating, is it only a multi-sector, multi-stakeholder approach that is the effective avenue for achieving media and information literacy, given the globalized world of which we live in?
Want to go first?
Sure, please, Ms. Mills.
Okay. Definitely, it's a multi-stakeholder task that we're facing when it comes to media and information literacy. In the Caribbean in particular, what I would like to see is our own stories more on the internet, because unfortunately, we only get the horror, the tragedies on international media, for example, and our media somehow gets lost in digital spaces. And when it comes to telling our own stories, it gets lost somewhere where the Caribbean is seen as paradise or it's seen as hell when it comes to the crime elevation in some islands, or some tragedy like a hurricane devastation or earthquake. So it definitely needs more, I want to say more collaboration when it comes to the Caribbean. In particular in St. Kitts, we definitely need more collaboration with the government, with all the media, radio, TV, the libraries here, the schools. We definitely need to work more closely together, which there is a lot of work still needed to be done, because for us, this is something new that my 10-year-old knows more about social media and media online and social media platforms. If something goes wrong, she's the one who fixes it for me. And there's an opportunity for the government, for the education system, for the media to basically teach kids here, even the churches, like everything is online now. So there's information out there that all of us can basically come together and make sure that what we're producing, what we're putting out there is a total effort between all of us, because it affects all of us, right? And St. Kitts is small, but we do have a close-knit society where all of us know everybody in each institution here. So it can happen here. And bigger islands like where you guys are from, it probably might have more of a task. But I think when the smaller islands get to actually working together and all the institutions and organizations realize, hey, we have a chance where kids can learn about the media literacy and the newsrooms. For example, journalists going to schools every week to do remember we used to have current events in school? I don't know if they do that still, because I've never heard my daughter have to write down what news stories. You had to do a regional, a local, and an international news story, and then read it in front of the class. Yes. On Monday mornings.
And I'm not sure I'm not sure if that actually is something that still exists, but that's a very good point that you
Yes,
raised.
exactly. I used to do it in primary school, but I don't think she has to anymore. So for her, news comes from whatever she sees on TikTok or YouTube, or what I tell her, because I'm in the industry. But other than that, she has no real idea of what's going on unless she reads about it. But she's pretty up to date for 10. But there's so many opportunities that
Ms.
we can...
Mills, can I just interrupt you there for a moment? My apologies, but what you've mentioned thus far, what of the commitment of digital platforms as well as part of media and information literacy?
Yeah, there's this issue that we're facing now. I don't know, well, for Facebook Meta, we have this issue where we can't post news in Canada anymore. I don't know if you're aware of that, right? So when we're on digital platforms that basically tell us how we're going to do news in the Caribbean, that's an issue for me. So Facebook and Instagram are blocking, well, the government in Canada has put legislation in place where Meta has decided that they're not producing news anymore. So our news, for example, is blocked for Canadians. they can't see what we have on social media. And we didn't even have a say in that. We didn't have a say. We weren't at the table. We weren't invited. They just told us this is what they're going to do. And so we have a lot of Canadian followers on our social media platforms and digital platforms, and they can't see what's happening, especially with the diaspora in Canada who are from St. Kitts. So our little 50,000 population is now subjected to the Facebooks and the Google and the YouTubes that say, hey, this is how you're going to put the information out, or we won't put it out there. And unfortunate that we don't have a say.
Ms. Goodman, your thoughts and opinions in regards to a multi-stakeholder, multi-sector approach in promoting media and information literacy?
I definitely agree that we need a multi-sector, multinational, everything approach to treating with media and information literacy. And at NALIS, that's our approach as well. And hence we've collaborated with a number of local organizations. We've signed MOUs with a number of organizations of complementary interests and skills to reach persons, their target audiences, as well as we've collaborated with national libraries. We've signed MOUs with National Library of China, National Library of Cuba, National Library of Peru, and we're also a member of the International Silk Road Library Alliance, which provides us with a platform not only to gather information and disseminate information and to treat with this issue, but also to train our staff in an important way so the staff in turn will be able to serve the public well. So a multi-sector, multi-organization, bilateral, international approach is definitely needed to treat with this issue of that we're dealing with in terms of information delivery and persons being able to access information, evaluate it, and of course analyze the information correctly. But it's a long road, but I'm glad we've all started. I mean, kudos to UNESCO, obviously, for the initiative, and it's a good conversation for us to continue because we know it's very, very important, and we have to instill from a very young age at our primary school level, if not our Montessori school level, about the importance of gathering information, analyzing information, and using the information to make important decisions or to make, we have said we want you to evaluate, to think, and to make better decisions.
Certainly. Well, Ms. Mills, Ms. Goodman, it has been a pleasure indeed. I thank you very much, both of you, for your generosity this morning in sharing your experiences, your opinions with us on media information and literacy here in Trinidad and Tobago, in St. Kitts and Nevis, and by extension, what we are seeing taking place in the Caribbean. And as Ms. Goodman mentioned, I'm glad that we've started. It is a long road ahead indeed, but certainly progress has been made. Thank you very much to both of you for joining me for this special edition of the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for having us, and do have a good day.
To you too.
Thank you, guys.
To you too. Keep well and take care. And of course, thank you very much to Miss Maria Cherie. She volunteered as the co-lead for the Latin American Caribbean Regional Chapter of UNESCO Media and Information Literacy Alliance between 2020 and 2022, who played an integral role in bringing together this conversation this morning. Thank you very much, Ms. Cherie, for all your efforts and all the work that you have done in making this program possible and, of course, a success. And to UNESCO for the work that it has done over the last 10 years and the work that it is continuing to do in promoting media and information literacy. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the privilege and the opportunity of being able to host this conversation this morning. To you, the viewing audience, it has been a pleasure. We have spoken a lot. We have learned a lot. And bear in mind, there still is a level of responsibility that you, the digital citizen, has to play. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll be right back after this. This is your WESN News on the Hour. Thank you for joining us. Here are the headlines. 5-year-old girl left in hot car in critical condition. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez refutes ransomware attack claims on TSTT. Law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics. In regional news, magnitude 5.4 earthquake rattles near Hope Bay in Jamaica. With the details, I'm Keaton Shaw. Superior authorities have launched an investigation into a harrowing incident that unfolded on Sunday, where a 5-year-old girl was discovered trapped in a locked car for several hours, now battling for her life in critical condition at a local hospital. Initial reports indicate that the child's mother had entrusted her care to a relative while she attended a funeral. The 41-year-old mother had arranged for a female relative to accompany her daughter and other children to the funeral service. The distressing turn of events occurred around 4 p.m. when the mother returned from the funeral, encountered the relative but noticed the absence of her daughter. Inquiring about the child's whereabouts, the relative shockingly revealed that she had left the 5-year-old unattended in the vehicle. The child was found inside the car in an unconscious state, covered in vomit and urine. Quick action was taken to rush the young girl to the Superior District Health Facility, where she received initial treatment before being transferred to the San Fernando General Hospital. Her condition grew dire as she was moved to the intensive care unit to the resuscitation room. Medical assessments have since revealed the gravity of the child's condition, which includes severe dehydration with potential heat stroke, possible aspiration pneumonia, and suspected hypoxic brain injury. The incident has sparked both public concern and the ongoing investigation by local law enforcement. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez has categorically denied allegations of a ransomware attack on the telecommunications services of Trinidad and Tobago. The reports of this breach initially surfaced 3 days ago when tech journalist Mark Lindesay, writing on his website technewstt.com, highlighted the incident. In his article, Lindesay cited falconfeeds.io, a cybersecurity firm known for reporting breaches via its Twitter feed, which claimed that tsttt.co.tt and bmobile.co.tt had fallen victim to the breach. The reported haul included 6 GB of customer lines, ID scans, GitLab projects, and database dumps. Over the weekend, falconfeeds.io identified ransomware group RansomX as the perpetrators behind the attack. However, Minister Gonzalez refuted these claims, stating, open quotations, "It is not true," end quotations, during a brief interview. He also mentioned that TSTT will release an official statement on the matter in due course. Mark Lindesay, in a news report, expressed concerns regarding the seriousness of RansomX's reported breach of telecommunication services of Trinidad and Tobago's data, emphasizing the public remains largely unaware of the full extent of the incident. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service supported members of the Special Olympians on Sunday during the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics along the North Coast Road. The TTPS, united with servicemen and women, the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, hosted the largest public awareness vehicle and grassroots fundraiser for the Special Olympics, which is also known as Guardians of the Flame. During the run, law enforcement members and Special Olympics athletes carried the flame of hope into the opening ceremony of local competitions and into Special Olympic state, national, regional and world games. Annually, more than 100,000 dedicated and compassionate law enforcement members carry the flame of hope, symbolizing the courage and celebration of diversity, uniting communities around the globe. In regional news, Hope Bay, Jamaica experienced a noticeable seismic event on Monday as an earthquake with a magnitude of 5.4 struck the area, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Thankfully, there have been no immediate reports of significant damage resulting from the quake. The USGS reported the earthquake occurred at a depth of 10 kilometers below the Earth's surface. Following the seismic activity, Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness took to social media to express his concern for the safety of the population. That's news to the hour on WESN and Keaton Shaw. Thank you for watching. We'll have more for you at the top of the hour.
Since they were on sale, Laura bought these umbrella shoes without thinking. Literally, without thinking. Hungry for deals? You'd better come and satisfy it at KFC before doing something crazy. Wow Bucket, 7 pieces of chicken and 4 regular sides for $115. A finger-licking good deal.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. My next conversation focuses on the maiden contribution by an independent senator in Parliament during the budget speech. That whole debate in regards to the presentation by the Minister of Finance. Now, in her maiden contribution, independent senator Dr. Sharda Patisar, she called for an end to tribal politics and the start of meaningful conversations about the development of Trinidad and Tobago. So let's expand on that this morning by welcoming to the program Dr. Patisar, and she's with us via Zoom. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining me this morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine, quite fine.
Thank you. Now, you took the position actually in your maiden contribution to address the issue of tribal politics. It is a term that we do not hear quite often, more so only when elections come around. But why, in your maiden speech, your maiden contribution, did you decide to take such a position?
Actually, what I was articulating was a conversation that took place at the Youth Budget Forum. And one of the young persons there expressed that view that this whole concept of tribal politics, the constant blaming and throwing, hurling insults at each other across the Parliament floor was not attractive to younger people. They were interested in understanding the issues. Mm-hmm. So that's why I brought it up. In a sense, I was being their voice.
In being their voice, though, and in what you would have learned from them speaking to you and expressing their thoughts and opinions on the political landscape that is Trinidad and Tobago, what exactly are they expressing? Is it that they are dissatisfied with politicians, their actions and behavior, or generally just the conversations and the debates about TNT's development?
I think it's both. It's the behavior in Parliament, as well as they also feel that there's no meaningful discussion taking place. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I think what is most interesting, though, is that young people are taking such an approach. But for you as an individual who has focused a lot on culture, who has focused a lot on research, what does that suggest to you about the stance of young people here in Trinidad and Tobago? We can't say it's for all. It's not necessarily a blanket for all. But especially in your interactions, what does that suggest about the future of Trinidad and Tobago's politics?
Well, if I had to judge by the conversations that took place at that budget forum, I would say that we are pretty much in good hands. because there's a very strong focus on what is best. I feel that youth as well, however, has to also, you know, as a young person, you can be quite how should I put it, exuberant.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in that, you too might forget to listen, caught up in your, I mean, I'm speaking from experience, right?
Yes.
You come out with new knowledge as a graduate. You have ideas. So I feel like everybody else, if we're looking seriously at development, we have to first learn to listen. And I can't reiterate that anymore.
No, I think that's a very interesting point that you're seeing, that how we are in good hands if we take a look at what the young people of Trinidad and Tobago have to offer, even in terms of their mindset and their thinking. But even though such opportunities exist, the room for that to go completely off track is still there. Youth are still vulnerable to the very things that they complain about and stand against.
Yes, they can be. Yeah. So I feel like this time, and I'm just looking at the movements within the world itself, right? There seems to be a general movement to self-development, very strong movement to that. You look at the movements like small homes, like yoga, meditation. Those are things that are cropping up now, and it suggests that need globally for more introspection. And I feel that that's what's kind of we're also at that point where we want to focus on.
Let's take a quick break here on the program, ladies and gentlemen, because when we return, we're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Pastor about holistic conversations and how we may actually be deliberately turning our backs towards the bigger issues here in TNT. So when we return, we'll get into that aspect of the conversation.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Let the Home Store turn your house into a home you love. Get everything you need to give your home that special look and feel. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. 5 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at Westmore, Pennywise Plaza Shoguanas, C3 Center Branch and C3 San Fernando. Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love.
Welcome back to the program. We're discussing tribal politics and the political landscape here in Trinidad and Tobago, how youth view it, especially affecting the development, the nation's development, that is. Dr. Pastor, thank you once more for joining us. And where we left off in regards to people actually at times deliberately turning their back to such issues, tribal politics, the racial tensions that exist in Trinidad and Tobago. Is it at times deliberately ignored and then deliberately raised?
That's a good question. And I would want to ask you what your opinion about that is.
Switching the rules this morning.
because that use of the word tribal politics, first of all, we use it very, very loosely. We, as you rightly say, we use it when is election time coming around. And I was always curious as to whether people actually, understood exactly what that meant, that term.
So, in my position, and if you're asking me my particular opinion, there are two interpretations from it. I'm not going to go into the whole political science talk about it, but I will tell you from my interactions with citizens here in Trinidad and Tobago, the two definitions that the layman uses is that tribal politics is equal to me supporting one particular party no matter what. No matter what it is, whether wrong is being projected, whether or not hatred is being projected, misinformation, disinformation, whatever be the case, I'll always support them no matter what, because in my eyes they're always right. But then the second definition that I've heard is that tribal politics relates to me aligning myself with a party no matter what my beliefs are or opinions are, or whether or not those are shared opinions and beliefs, just based off of my ethnicity. Those are the two definitions that I've heard from all aspects on the ground here in TNT.
Right. And yes, that I wouldn't say that you're wrong, actually, because that whole concept of tribal politics, if we look at it as a whole, it's about people coming in with their preconceived ideas, as you describe it, and they're comfortable to stay there, and there's this mentality of, for me to win, you have to lose. So, and it's been caught. It's been blinding us to really having an intelligent conversation about where do we go from here. And I feel that's where we need to start. We need to start moving away from that and having those conversations, because it divides us along ethnicity, race, class. Those are the categories, right? Yeah.
Now, that is a very interesting point. Is it that you're suggesting that we focus so much on one issue? For example, today we're speaking about economics. Tomorrow we might speak about crime. The next day we may speak about other issues such as opportunity. But we are ignoring holistic conversations. We are not having that holistic approach that we should be. We're not adopting that attitude.
Yeah, because and I suppose, yes, that is exactly what I was suggesting. I suggested it in the speech as well, in the budget speech, because there's this sort of separation of, well, I'll just use the term disciplines, but everything affects the other. So where the government currently is pushing what they describe as a wellness agenda, that is directly linked to crime. It's directly linked to people's ability to live decent lives. Cost of living is high. It's linked across the board to culture, people's feelings of belonging here. And it's interesting because the National Cultural Policy actually does acknowledge that. It does acknowledge this historical preconceived notions of each other, which they've set out as one of the things to be rectified.
But Dr. Pastor, in my experience, acknowledging something does not necessarily mean you're living by it. It just says, yes, I recognize that this exists, but that's just about it.
Right. It's good that you said it, because this is actually, this is not just part of national development. It's also, it starts with the way people with self-development and acknowledging and then acting on it.
Acknowledging
so
and then...
You're right.
But then, whilst we've acknowledged it, we have not acted upon it. The world continues to evolve. You can have debates as to whether or not progress is being made in other spheres of this world. But that being said, what does it suggest about us? We're trying to be a first world nation whilst not necessarily tackling a third world mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. So
my question really is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about this? And this has to be, it has to be a very robust collective effort, in my opinion. It has to be not just this this issue of, okay, we are consulting, but I don't even know what that consulting looks like. Who are the people? Who are those people that you're speaking with? Do they represent everyone across the board?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm also acknowledging that there tends to be limits to equity, but we have to start somewhere.
Now, in that sense as well, how do we go about changing the consciousness? And now I'm speaking from the aspect that, yes, you focus a lot on culture throughout your life. You focus a lot on research. And even this morning you've spoken to the philosophical aspect of us. So then, if that be the case, how do we change the consciousness?
It really has to start from, I feel, the way that we practice politics, one, because it filters into the streets and into the way that people construct the notions of themselves. But it also has to come from the communities as well. And my question really always is, are we interested enough? Because it seems that we are tired as a people.
You've been given the opportunity and a great responsibility, a privilege nonetheless, to serve as an independent senator. But it's also not an easy position that you find yourself in. Because though at times you may have strong opinions, you must also find balance and speak on a very impartial ground and contribute in a very impartial manner. But that being said, what do you suppose is in your own words, the opportunities, the responsibility, and what you as a young individual and a young woman in this society would you like to achieve during your term as an independent senator?
I think it's really for me to start the conversation, to articulate the need for people to step back from this whole tradition of aligning themselves and really start asking questions. If I were to think of one thing, it is about getting people to ask the questions of themselves and of their representatives, and to do it not in an attacking way, because that's not my personal approach. I prefer to have an intelligent conversation where we can also agree to disagree. It's not just always about agreeing with each other, right?
Dr. Pastor, I think we share lots of ideals, but I think more so what you just mentioned, the very last thing, to recognize that it's okay to disagree. We don't always have to be on the same wavelength. Well, my sincerest best wishes to you, and good luck on trying to achieve that. That is going to be a tremendous uphill battle, I can tell you that. But the mere fact that you've pointed it out and recognized, listen, perhaps this is where we need to start. And, I can only hope that your efforts lead to success.
Well, I hope that people will join it.
Certainly. Thank you very much for your time this morning. It's been an absolute wonder of having this conversation. And thank you for actually starting this conversation. And let's see where it goes.
Well, thank you for asking the intelligent questions and having this discussion.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to the next one. All the best to you. Keep well and take care.
Same to you. Thanks.
Dr. Shada Patterson joining me this morning on AM Prime. Well, she took the opportunity in her maiden contribution to relate to parliamentarians and senators that what she would have heard from youth conversations is that the type of politics taking place in TNT and its behavior, they are not happy with. Try to tie that into the issue of racial tensions, and I'm glad Dr. Patterson didn't shy away from that conversation either. But as she said, I feel as though I have a responsibility where I'd like to start the conversation and that we must realize that it's okay to disagree. It's going to be a very difficult battle, but nevertheless, we can always support that. TNT has a lot to offer. The young people have a lot to offer. Let's see what we actually do in terms of setting the platform for such. Anyway, it has been wonderful having this conversation this morning, these conversations this morning as we started the program on UNESCO's Information and Literacy Week 2023, October 24th to the 31st this morning, of course, speaking on the theme for this year, a collective global agenda. Digital space is, of course, the focus of that conversation. And then Dr. Pasha for the intertribal politics. I'm Keaton Shaw, and this has been WESN's AM Prime. Wishing you a good day ahead, a safe one, a productive one. Should things go good, and I certainly hope they do, we'll see you again tomorrow morning for the program. We'll be right back.